Hey, hello, this is Jessica. I'm joined today by Courtney and Carlos from Cosecha. Would y'all like to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hey, I'm Courtney Hicks, the Executive Director of Cosecha Community Development.
I'm Carlos Uroza. I'm the pastor of Woodbine United Methodist Church and Primera Iglesia, and I guess a board member of Cosecha Community Development.
Awesome. Can y'all tell me a little bit about what Cosecha is and how it got started?
Sure. So, Cosecha is a community development ministry that came out of a vision that both myself and Carlos had to do community ministry in Woodbine around the church, Woodbine UMC. And so we started dreaming about what that could look like not this past February, but the February before, so almost 2 years ago. And we just started recruiting other people who got excited at the idea of really just walking alongside our neighbors in Woodbine and what that could look like. And so we built a board of directors last fall. And we actually have 5 different churches that are represented on our board, 4 of those being neighborhood churches in the community that we serve. Is really cool. So it's kind of this effort of neighbors and ministry partners coming together to be the church in the community. And so our mission is that we gather neighbors together to foster community. And we do this by building relationships, by celebrating culture, by promoting health and offering sanctuary within the Nolensville Pike corridor. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means and what that looks like to us here in a few minutes.
Yeah. It's also one of the churches that is part of our partnership is Brentwood United Methodist Church. And as the beginning of these conversations, actually every time it seems like God has been opening doors and showing us many ways in which this is the right thing for us to do in the neighborhood, and so it's been a blessing so far.
Awesome. So what is the vision going forward? Some goals and ideas for the future.
Sure. So one of the things that brought Carlos and I together to begin with is the church, Woodbine UMC, has a building, their old education building, that needs new life. And so we first came together and started visioning about Cosecha of what we could do out of that building for the community. And so that's a long-term goal, is to renovate their education building into a community center where we would do programming out of for the community. We've had to adapt this year, and really this is our first full year of existence as an official nonprofit organization. And so one of our goals that we've had to postpone is to start an after-school program for elementary students in the Woodbine community of the church space there. And so that's been put on hold because of COVID-19. And so we're adapting that this fall into a virtual mentoring program where we're going to pair adult mentors with students, elementary students and middle school students in our neighborhood, to do a weekly check-in with them, to tutor as needed, and just really to see how their family's doing, if there are any needs that we could pull community resources to meet. And so really just walking alongside the families as they navigate this virtual world of virtual learning, and this really hard time of losing jobs and not getting to be out like we normally are. So just really partnering with the schools and the families to make sure that everybody's okay through all this. And then another thing that we wanted to launch this year was a community farmers market. And also because of COVID-19, that has adapted and changed into a community garden share, which is where we have neighbors coming together to share produce that they grow at their homes and their gardens, We're also gleaning some from local farms as well.
Mhm.
And so we come together once a week in our community, and we have a garden share where people can come and they can share, they can swap fresh produce, and there's no cost. And so we had our third garden share yesterday, and we had a lot of neighbors come out, which was really cool to see. And so our community is diverse here, and I feel like yesterday it was represented really well at our garden share. And so that's one way we've adapted. We also have done some COVID neighborhood relief work this year. Back in the month of May, each week we provided food and pantry boxes for 15 different families at our neighborhood middle school. And so we had a whole lot of volunteers helping in different ways in a safe manner to be able to do that. So what we thought our ministry work would look like this year looks quite a bit different, but we're still moving forward. We're getting creative, we're working together, and we're going out into the community to do ministry together.
Yeah. And for me, I think that one of the incredible ways in which God is showing us that to have an open mind in a way that, things could change, and, we can come up with all these plans and all these ideas. At the end of the day, it seems like if we just keep working hard and trying to stick to our values and our mission, I feel like God is just doing something really beautiful. That probably at the beginning, I think, like Courtney said it, we started probably it's more than a year ago when we started having conversations, and I'm sure that back in the day we had these dreams and things that we still trying to move towards them, but it seems just that as life and culture is changing and everything around us, it has just been an amazing journey to see how God is doing some things. And also it's important that remember that this is a project that is with the principles of Christian community development. And so it's not just another nonprofit in the community. It's part of our identity of being the church in the neighborhood, and just maybe in a little different way with the collaborations with other communities around us. And I feel like that has been a great thing. And to another thing is, we said that the name of this organization is Cosecha, which means harvest, and we realized that it's taking a whole lot more time to plant. But somehow now that we're doing this community garden, and to me it's just this I don't know, there's just something very spiritual that God is bringing us to this point. It's like, hey, your name is Cosecha, your name is harvest, and like you are actually being able to spend some time with some members in the community as you bring some of that harvest. And so I don't know, to me that's just I guess would be like a testimony for me. And I don't know if that's how you see it also, Courtney, or you have experienced that, Jessica. Maybe it has been a very interesting journey, but I find it very spiritual, the moment in which we are right now. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought yesterday at our garden share, I described it as a pastoral opportunity and experience, just getting to see from a distance behind masks, but getting to see and talk to families in our neighborhood, and to hear how they're doing, what's been tough through the season, and how we can support each other, just having a conversation, how we can support each other moving forward. And I think the fact that we're going to be there at least once a week on Wednesdays doing the garden share, I'm hoping people will come back and it'll really become a community all around harvesting.
Yes.
I've been using a hashtag sharing is caring. And yesterday it was beautiful to see some people who came who needed food. And so they took food for free. A lot of people gave a donation to Cosecha in exchange. We had neighbors bring produce from their garden and then take some produce home with them. And then we had a neighbor who works at a local farm who brought extra produce from that farm to share, but she didn't take anything with her. She said, we're okay, we have what we need. And so it was just a beautiful vision of community coming together, people supporting each other, just being outside. And even though we have to wear masks and we have to wash our hands and stay apart, we're getting creative and providing some sort of opportunity to create community.
And can I just share that one of the things that I noticed yesterday also as well, we had a good flow of people coming in. It wasn't like like a bunch of people at once. And because the way that things are with COVID, it actually allows to be almost one-on-one with each of the neighbors that came in, contrary that if we would have a farmer's market where people are just scattered and, you come in and they go out and maybe you can have some words. But to me, yesterday I left with the impression that the faces of the people that came yesterday, they were marked in my brain. And so I would remember them. I would remember them, and I know that they probably. But right now, I can just see their eyes. But at least I know, they're another car, or some of them I got to hear some stories. And so, I think that we look at all the negative things that are happening with COVID, but I think that even all this process, when there's maybe you have to have a protocol how things are approached. We need to find the bright side that in those things, God is also doing some maybe deeper connection. I don't know. Maybe that's something to consider.
You're answering my questions before I ask them. Are there any more stories of God's provision and stories of transformation you'd like to share?
Well, my personal experience, I want to share that I started doing a garden 2 years ago. And my first year, I think that it was just like, oh, let's start a garden. And then things just I didn't put much time in it. And then this last year was a learning experience about, oh, okay, you should not plant this next to this and all. And so this year, I feel like we have not, we are all really busy. And even though we are at home, sometimes, I don't know, I tend to forget how to just to water as often as I need. But it's just been an incredible year for produce. And when I saw the vines of these beautiful tomatoes and really to have the abundance up there, I realized like just seeing.
I'd finish his sentence if I knew what he was going to say. You want me to answer?
Sure. I don't want him to unfreeze and then still be talking, and I don't know. Yeah, go ahead.
I think I don't have a specific answer right now for that. I think it's yet to come this year. And I say that because we're about to launch a virtual mentoring program, which will allow for a lot more people, volunteers, to get involved and be a part of Cosecha, because it'll be done remotely from someone's home or workplace via Zoom. And being able to start to build relationships with students and families that once we're all out of isolation will have planted the seed and begun the groundwork to build those relationships, to recruit students to actually come and be a part of the programs that we have big dreams for in the future. And so I think it's going to be really cool, the fact that now that we have to go virtual instead of in person, instead of serving 15 students, we're going to be serving at least 30, probably more, if we can recruit the number of volunteers we would need to serve more students. And so I think it's going to be really neat to see what that looks like and how that plays out, and the relationships that are built through Zoom, because that's our option right now. And I think one thing too I'd like to mention is Carlos mentioned we're part of Christian Community Development and kind of operate out of that philosophy for ministry. And a big part of that is listening to the community and to community needs. And so one of the things that I heard, we work a lot with our neighborhood elementary school and our neighborhood middle school. And so we work with Community Achieves in Metro Nashville Public Schools, and one of their directors is on our board of directors. And so one thing I heard from her that stood out to me when I asked the question, are there other community partners doing things in person? Because I had this whole idea of potentially how we could do something in person safely, but with a very small amount of people and certain protocols and covenants to agree to. And so what I heard from her was, no, other community partners aren't doing in person. And if they were, we wouldn't be able to support it because it's not following the protocol and decision of Metro Nashville Public Schools. And so when I heard that, that told me we've got to get creative. We've got to think out of the box. We have to figure out something to do this fall as school starts virtually that is part of our ministry and part of our vision, but it's just going to look very different. And so that was a big piece in deciding how to move forward this fall and what we actually do. But I'm excited to see, and even being able to serve middle school students too, that's something that we weren't going to be able to do yet. We were going to start with an elementary after school program. And so I think that's, it makes our ministry reach a lot more students and families than if we were actually in person. And so there's just a lot of potential that I think we have going forward, given our crazy situation and having to adapt. So I'm excited to see where that goes and where that leads and the stories that come out of that. And my guess is that our volunteers that we recruit to be mentors will have their perspective and their lives changed in some way, given building a relationship through Zoom with students and their families and being able to really kind of, it gives you a glimpse into somebody's life when you go on Zoom with them and you see like their home and it's just like a different thing than seeing them at school. And so I think it's going to lead to pretty cool things relationship wise.
Sorry.
Carlos, you're back.
I'm back.
I don't know what happened. What did I say? Where did I freeze? Sorry.
I don't remember what you were saying when you froze, but we're still talking.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So what I was saying is that it has been a good year in my garden, and I realized that it's been more than we actually need, and how sometimes there's way like this things are in the garden. It's very plentiful, and just seeing vegetables sitting there in the countertop right yesterday was to me like, again, it was a spiritual moment, like Courtney said, a very pastoral moment. Seeing a woman almost in tears for seeing that she's receiving a fresh tomato, that's the moment I realized, like, wow, we're holding on to so many blessings where there's people that actually need it. And so to me, that has been testimony. There have been many ways, like ways in which God has opened doors, and sometimes some doors have been closed, and maybe for the good. But I think that now that we get to see some live experiences with community, I think that this is going to be, I'm going to say 2020, it might end up being a good year.
All right.
That's
I'll say this. Having been a part of starting a nonprofit earlier in my life, it's a pretty crazy time to start a new nonprofit and try to figure out what in the world we can do. But I mean, God gives us vision and creativity and somehow, some way, the ability to consistently adapt. So it's been a good year.
Okay.
but crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were saying a little bit, Courtney, about volunteers. That was my next question. How can people volunteer? What is the process for that?
So there's two ways right now we have to volunteer with Cosecha. The first being to serve as a virtual mentor through our mentoring program that we're starting with elementary and middle school students. And so right now on our website, which is cosecha.community, there's a volunteer application. And so we're asking everybody to fill that out, to send it in. And then we'll do a brief interview with them. And then also they'll need to go through a background check to be able to volunteer with us. And so we'll be doing some training as well. And then we will pair our volunteers with the students. And then what we're asking them to do is to do a Zoom check-in call for up to an hour once a week through the fall semester. So August through December is what we're asking for commitment-wise. And then also our garden share happens every Wednesday. And so if people have gardens and they have booths that share with us, we have drop-off opportunities that are listed on our website as well, or we could potentially come and pick it up too. So we would love to share the harvest. So that's one way, that's one easy way to get involved, or to even come to the garden share as well and to bring that extra produce.
Alrighty.
And also, this isn't necessarily volunteer, but because we're a nonprofit, we have to fundraise. And so that's a thing that as a brand new nonprofit this year, we've been very blessed with donations that we have received, but we continue to fundraise and fund our future. And so we haven't been able to launch any sort of individual giving campaign because of COVID-19. But we're always looking for individual donors as well to invest in our work, which you can also do through our website, cosecha.community.
That was my next question. You answered it before I asked it.
I think we've done this plenty of times.
So how can we be in prayer for Cosecha?
I would say really to pray for the students and families that we're connecting with and that live in our community here. It's a hard time for everybody, and just the idea of navigating now virtual school, and the thought of families who have multiple children in their house that are all going to be having to log on and do that. And a lot of the families that we work with are Latino, and so just that English, Spanish learning curve there, I think it's going to be tough. And so just being in prayer for all those kids and their families as we navigate it together.
And
really,
go ahead.
I'd say, and for us, me and for Carlos and for our board of directors, and just really continuing to listen and to navigate what's next for Cosecha. And so just to be in prayer for us and our discernment and decision making as we move forward.
Yeah, and I think that praying during all these adjustments and trying to find creative ways to connect with people, just praying for volunteers that are willing to really make connections with us. It's not just about being able to mentor somebody academically. Like right now, like Courtney say, there are difficult times, and I feel like this is a time in which how sometimes in the scripture we talk about how we are called to be part of the priesthood. We are part of a royal priesthood, and so I think that we can have a lot of people that are willing to volunteer, but we need people that are willing to also have that pastoral care, and because a lot of we're going to be experiencing with children with a lot of trauma and not a lot of accessible um, um, resources for many of these families. And we have partnerships in the school system, but we also know that they're scrambling, and the amount of students that they're trying to figure out how to do this year. Also I want us to pray for them, because we're just trying to help and pick up some of the work that they do. But most important for us is that we are not necessarily, our job is not primarily do the academic part. Is I feel like our component is to really be be the church, be a presence in the lives of those children and families. And so I guess my prayer is that we're asking for discernment for our own leadership in the way that we move forward. But I guess my prayer is to have willing volunteers that are that take the time to in a way be pastoral and care, and really make a connection with them. This is not just like, let's volunteer and build a habitat house, which is great, but there's not a whole lot of connection with us families. So this is what we're trying to do, is gathering neighbors together to foster community. So
Yeah, that's
we need
awesome.
volunteers with that mentality.
Mhm.
So
So that was my last specific question. Is there anything else y'all would like to share?
I
some of these, sorry, go ahead. You go ahead.
would say, Carlos, I think you mentioned this earlier, just our connection with Brentwood United Methodist Church. Um, we're just very thankful and grateful for that connection. I know a lot of amazing things and dreams and visions have come out of that church. And so I just really appreciate, having been a part of several of those at different points, I just really appreciate the support that Brentwood does offer, and the willingness to invest in something like Cosecha Community Development to start in our neighborhood here in Woodbine, and just that partnership. We appreciate it.
And to celebrate that, there's so many things that probably are not they're not in the marquee of the accomplishments of a church. But I think that it is important to celebrate how Brentwood, even in the little things that they do, they're making connections that they're probably not intended. Because like we were saying, our connection to do this project began by me attending a fundraising for another organization that Brentwood has support for so long. And it was this moment, and I said, we have a building and we got to do something. And having that conversation is probably something that Brentwood did not intended, but because the ministries that they do, they are bring people together, and the spirit moves, and then the spirit leads. And so that's how all this connection happened with us. And a year and a couple months later, it's we're not an official, is that correct? We're not an official partner to
Strategic.
Brentwood.
Yeah.
We're not an official strategic partnership with Brentwood, but Brentwood in a way is an important part of facilitating into setting this little thing in movement. So I don't know.
Awesome. Well, thanks for meeting with me today and telling me about things.
Thank
Oh, and
you.
also thank you for you. Thank you for you, Jessica. You've been with us for all this time, and you saw you. So that's another thing is like, you are a Brentwood United Methodist, and you have been with us volunteering and spend time, the heat and the frustration, and early not knowing what we're doing. And even though we're still in that journey, I think that you are a testimony. Your life is a testimony that you have seen how these things are actually moving, and how it takes time, but we're in the right path, I believe so. So
Thanks.
We're grateful for you too, Jessica.
Thanks. All right.